Everybody knows what the Cardinals need to do to round out the 2024 NFL season. Will they? And what's their mindset going into Sunday at home against Seattle? Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter, Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start this season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, you know, as everydayers, that one day a week, usually earlier in the week, we kind of do a big picture segment or a big picture show where it's like, okay, we know exactly what's going on. We know exactly why we're here witnessing what the Cardinals are doing and talking about the future pacedness of the next 6 weeks regarding playoffs, not playoffs, ramifications, if yes, if no, and how they get to one way or the other is necessary. Kind of a litmus test after every week, a barometer check. And today's no different. But this time, I've got a guest. And his name is Donnie Druin from Sports Illustrated. Does great work over there for SI, covering the Arizona Cardinals seasons now, right? What is this, year 3 or year 2? Full year.
Year 3 full-time. Fourth year in the facility overall.
Got it. Good stuff. So what's going to happen today is I'm going to pick Donnie's brain over what he thinks is going to happen the remainder of the season. I discussed it last week. And I want his thoughts. The second segment is going to be, is it the NFC West win or bust, which is going to obviously go hand in hand with the third segment. But first off, okay, the Cardinals lost. They've lost 2 in a row, 2 games they probably should have won if the offense played a full 60 minutes. Defense played well. Defense was bend, don't break until they broke because the defense isn't equipped to play full 60 minutes, saving the offense every week. It's just, these are just facts at this point. The team mindset is what I'm most excited to talk about because it's been very ho-hum. James Conner, contract extension. Not a big deal. It's what should happen. Darius Robinson, week 13. He comes back. Not a big deal. It's what should happen in the natured course of this season. But with that, Donnie, there's a lot of unknown regarding what people are really in the locker room because since the bye week, they've cooled the hell off. What are your what have you seen around the facility, whether it be press conferences or in the locker room, since this most recent loss?
Yeah, I want to date this back, Alex, to the moment before their bye week began, where they won their 4th straight game, a very, very big win. And the whole mantra was the season starts now. The real football season starts now. We got our swagger back. We're in position. We're first place in the NFC West. We can go make a playoff push. The real season starts now. They're 0-2 since then, like you had highlighted. They have fallen flat on their faces both games they went out. I understand going to Seattle, coming off a bye week where you didn't play. I do think that's a real thing. A lot of people point to the bye week, the week of rest, the extra prep. I think not playing football for a week after you've done it for a very long time definitely makes an impact. It definitely kind of leaves a little bit of rust. That can be hard to shrug off sometimes. Laid an egg in Seattle. I don't want to say they laid an egg in Minnesota, but they missed an opportunity. They missed a perfect opportunity multiple times at the expense of Jonathan Gannon being too conservative, whether that was the not going for 2 to make it a 14-point game, or whether that was going for a field goal rather than going for the jugular down at the 4-yard line towards the end of the game. What I'm seeing around the facility, what you're hearing around the facility, is there's no panic. This team, more than anything, is a process-driven team. It means win, lose, tie. We're going to look at the process. We're going to tweak it, but we're going to keep the main thing the main thing. That's what got them on the 4-game winning streak, and that's also what's gotten them on their 2-game losing streak heading into this week. They're confident, but I would be lying if I would say that there is or isn't maybe a different sense of urgency. The games, the tunnel at the end of the light, Alex, it's getting clear. It's approaching quicker week after week. They know it's a big game. It's not do or die quite yet time in Glendale. You know, if they lose at State Farm Stadium on Sunday, I don't think you throw the whole season away. But they know it's a big game. They know it's big, that they control their own destiny moving forward, and that begins with a win over Seattle in Week 14. So they try to downplay it. They say, you know, Jonathan Gannon used a boxing analogy yesterday, how you know, every week is a different round, and you know, they lost this round on Sunday, but they're going to get right back up and going to dust themselves off, and they're going to go again for another round. But I think everybody knows what's potentially at stake here whenever the Seahawks come to town for the second time in 3 games.
Yeah, and that's the thing, dude. It's like Donnie, Druin, Sports Illustrated joining me here, Locked On Cardinals. So, you know, yeah, all that's right. I mean, it all makes sense. It's all level-headed. It's different than what it was, and that's obvious. But that's no longer like a tip of the cap to that. That's just what it's supposed to be, because that's how rational organizations are run and coached, and that's seems to be where they are. If not, they're on the precipice of being that in somewhat perpetuity if the GM and head coach and coordinator stay the same. For me, and this is what has always irked me, especially over the last, you know, decade or so, 5 years, you know, with Steve Keim, et cetera, is they've always been reactive and not proactive. It's always been they've been chasing and not chased. And once they get chased for a second, it flips immediately and the cart's in front of the horse. And it's just, and that's what we saw since the bye week, 6-4, and now they're chasing. They were in control, and now they're chasing. And we saw that, and I think part of the vitriol coming from the fan base is the conservative nature of what Jonathan Gannon and Drew Petzing did this past Sunday is go win. Go take it. Don't just wait for the clock to run out. And for me, I think that I don't put the loss solely on anybody. I mean, I know that when you say something, it's like, well, obviously one of 22 and coaches. It's not just on one person. I think the biggest mistake that cost the Cardinals the game was Kyler Murray's intentional grounding. It's like, you don't do that. That is impossibility if you want to win a football game. And I know he was pressured. He's gotten out of worse. And if he breaks that edge on the right, he's running for a 30-yard touchdown or whatever it is. It was a 10-yard touchdown, but it'd be like a 30-plus yarder. Coaching to allow the defense to eat like they had been, is that a fallacy? Like, can you not trust this defense to win a game for 60 minutes every week? Is that something that needs to be expunged from the record here and have the offense be more proactive and go get it instead of hoping the defense can hold?
Look, I think never did I think you or I think at this point in the season we would talk about the defense, maybe even more specifically Nick Rallis, putting the Superman cape on and trying to save this team week after week after week. And I think they've excelled all expectations thus far. You know, going into Minnesota, when you have a defensive coordinator like Brian Flores, who will disguise everything, throw the entire kitchen sink at you, maybe a couple of tools underneath it as well. Nick Rallis showed up to US Bank Stadium and was like, hey man, like my foot's going to be on the gas. Come play. And I think for a very, very big majority of that game, that's exactly what happened. I don't think this team is built for the defense to necessarily play hero ball every week. I don't think they are way too talented offensively to have to rely on a defense without BJ Ojulari, without Justin Jones, without Bilal Nichols, with Darius Robinson playing his first game, playing 22 snaps. This team should not have to rely on that defense. I want to bring it to this. And Greg Olsen made this perfect point whenever it came to the Cardinals kicking the field goal at the 4-yard line with 3 minutes left, as opposed to going for it. That game's entirely different if they go for it and they either get the touchdown, they put themselves ahead, they go for the jugular, or they miss it. And now the Vikings have to go 96 yards. Okay, to score a touchdown. There was a play, Alex, that 4th and 7, where they found Justin Jefferson wide open in zone coverage.
Yeah.
If they're down by 3, they're kicking the field goal, and you get the ball back with a chance to score in all 3 timeouts. It's for what shocked me most was that Gannon and maybe Petzing, I don't know who has final say over, you know, when to go for it and when not to go for it. Oftentimes this year, they've been pretty proactive. They've been aggressive on keeping the ball, going for it, and really making sure that they are going to win the game themselves. They're not going to put the ball in the other team's hand to win the game. But I feel like last Sunday in Minnesota was a great example of teams that play to win and teams who play not to lose. And the Cardinals played not to lose and to bit them in the behind.
Yeah, and that's fine. And agreed. in hindsight, yeah, all the numbers say that 88% chance to win if they went for it on fourth, and 80% chance to win if they kicked it. Like, understood with all of it. I think that these are things that you're starting to see Jonathan Gannon being put in situations he's never been in before every week.
Sure.
And he's got to make the right decision, 51% or whatever, 80% of whatever a good coach would do. And I think that while the vitriol is warranted in some capacity, seeing the outcome makes how you got there a lot easier to judge. Like, if they would have stopped him on 4th and 7, it doesn't matter. It's just, and I get it. It was ugly. It was gross. They should have won by a lot more. I'm surprised they didn't find Justin Jefferson. They forgot Justin Jefferson was on the team for the first 2.5 quarters. Like, it was the wildest thing. And it's going to be very interesting to see how they bounce back on Sunday when truly they are in control of their own destiny. The schedule, the lack of very tough games left on their schedule compared to the first half. We're going to talk about that more. Is it NFC West win or bust for the Cardinals expectation-wise? Donnie Druin, Sports Illustrated, joins me. We'll discuss that next. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by, wait for it, Prize Picks. So here's the thing. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money action on daily fantasy. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cheese, man. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. There's so many cool things about this. One, the entry takes less than 60 seconds. The app is super clean, super easy to use. 60 seconds, more or less, 2 players, 4 players, 6 players, whatever it is. NFL, NBA, NHL, like, they've got golf, they've got college, they've got everything. So it's not just football. And also, say you cash in something. It can take as little as 15 minutes to get the money back in your account if you want to withdraw it back to your bank account. It is an absolute game changer for daily fantasy sports. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Go to prizepicks.com. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you place your first $5 lineup. You can download the app or go to the website. LOCKEDON NFL is the promo code. PrizePicks. Run your game. Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy. Follow me on Twitter, Clancy's Corner. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit the subscribe button. The season is interesting. I said before the season started, this is going to be the most exciting Arizona Cardinals season that I've experienced since 2011 being in sports media, because we don't know what the hell is going to happen. And there's also a plan for things to happen in a positive way. Roster construction, Kyler Murray's growth, whatever it is. Now, quickly before we move to the NFC West. I've never in my life in sports media, 13 years, like, people have been longer than me, but for me specifically, I've never seen a more polarizing character in Phoenix than Kyler Murray from the fan base. It's split. And every time he does something well, or every time he does something poorly, it's confirmation bias for whatever side you were already on. Like, there's no changing sides of the aisle at this point.
No.
And what he's done, he's a top QBR guy. People throw that away. Doesn't matter. He's efficient. Doesn't matter. He doesn't do it when it counts. Well, what about, the majority of the game against Minnesota, he had everything under control. It's doesn't matter. When it mattered, they kicked the field goal. So is everything going to plan? Like, are they behind the curve with the growth of Kyler Murray, with Drew Petzing in first full year, and the expectations they have, tied to it now?
I mean, you look at how the offense moved the ball, over 400 net yards. I mean, if you just looked at that in a vacuum, you would say, what's the problem? They're getting first downs, they're moving the ball. They were able to run it. They were able to find some, splash plays in the passing game. I do want to give a big shout out to Mike Wilson, because Mike, I feel like, is often overlooked. And it seems like every time they throw him the ball, he comes down with it, no matter where he's out in the field, no matter who's around him. So I think he should be a bigger part of the game plan moving forward. It feels like the debate on Kyler Murray has kind of grown into, is it a Kyler problem? Is it a Drew Petzing problem? Like, what's going on here? They have the weapons. The offensive line isn't playing poorly. Like, where's the disconnect? I think going 1 for 6 in the red zone says a lot about the play caller more so than the quarterback. I don't want to say things are behind schedule with where Kyler should be in the offense. I don't even think there's a problem with Kyler operating the offense. I don't think there's any issues on Kyler Murray's shoulders, other than sometimes, with how he plays, sometimes you live with it, sometimes you die with it. That's just the nature of having that athlete as a quarterback, and the decision making sometimes of Kyler Murray. It is what it is. It's led you to good, it's led you to bad. You kind of live with it. When it comes to his play caller, and I've seen people on Twitter say like Kyler's hit his ceiling in Drew Petzing's offense. I think this is the perfect, at least looking at it on paper, it's the perfect offense for Kyler. Get the run game going, play through play action that opens things up downfield. I think the Vikings did a lot of really good things to contain and keep the Cardinals from pushing the ball downfield. Not that Arizona really ever did so anyways, often to begin with. I guess to keep my tangent shorter than it actually should be, I don't think they're behind schedule. I think Kyler and Drew Petzing need to lock themselves in a room at the facility this week and iron a lot of things out, because going 1 for 6 in the red zone whenever you were how many perfect goal to go scenarios before that, something changed. You got figured out. And if you want to be playing deep in January, those are the two main guys I'm looking at. And then it'll all kind of dissolve from there.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. It's like, where were people talking about Drew Petzing when they were 16 for 16 and goal to go?
Yeah.
Oh, he was a wizard then. So now, yeah, they've got to tweak some things. I think the conservative nature of how things happen. I mean, listen, the intentional grounding forced them to be conservative on that drive. They were first and goal from the 10, even though the Tip Ryman false start that wasn't a false start. Get over it. It calls. One thing, and I haven't made this disclaimer, I have this every day, blaming refs is a loser mentality.
I would agree.
Don't do it.
Most scenarios.
Don't do it.
I agree.
Don't do it. And the Santonio Holmes thing, really quick, Kurt Warner threw a pick six before halftime. So that's why they lost the Super Bowl, not the Santonio Holmes catch. Anyways, the evolution of those two together can't take another step backward. And that could be happenstance. Two very tough places to play against two tough opponents. Seattle was coming off a very, very big emotional win against the 49ers the week before, while the Cardinals were sitting at home. And the Vikings are a well-oiled machine with talent everywhere. They're ready to win this year. The Cardinals are playing out of their shorts to be where they are right now.
Agreed.
And I think, that's the growth of the young players, the rookies, etc. But my thing to you, and we're going to push the NFC West things to the next segment. This is kind of what we do here. So for me, and I'm going to do a full segment to open the show tomorrow on this, is being proactive instead of reactive. Why not just gear this offense to make the defense adjust to them, not vice versa, not take what the defense gives. The Cardinals can do whatever the hell they want. And with Michael Wilson, as you mentioned very astutely, why not have Kyler Murray throw the ball 35 times? Like, it doesn't have to be run first. That's what it's been, because that's what's worked. If you run 5-yard outs all day and just death by 1,000 cuts with the wildly talented pass catchers the Cardinals have, you can do that also, right? Like, it doesn't have to be halfback dive on first down every series.
So I would agree. I think more than anything, the Petzing scheme, specifically in Arizona as the OC, functions so heavily on them being able to run the ball, right? Jonathan Gannon talks all the time about them being versatile, them being adaptable. And I think that the perfect litmus test for this was in Seattle. They were not able to establish the run at all. Same thing against the Commanders. They could not get anything going on the ground game. They were forced into long second and third down scenarios that they had to get out of their play call sheet, and they just weren't able to win in obvious passing down scenarios. They were able to find some success on the ground against the Vikings. I think that kept them balanced, but I don't think they were equipped to win. However, I really don't. But the other side of that coin, we talked about Drew Petzing, the goal to go. How many game-winning drives have the Cardinals orchestrated this year? People want to say, oh, they won by a field goal. They won by a field goal. They had to drive down the field. Okay, well, it still took Kyler Murray putting the ball in places it needed to be, and still took Drew Petzing calling those plays in order for those routes to be manufactured, right, against the perfect coverage. We also need to remember that Petzing's in his first year as an OC with Kyler at quarterback. He's not working with Josh Dobbs. He's not working with Clayton Tune. He's working with Kyler Murray. There were going to be some growing pains, but it's week 13. You're in the midst of a playoff push. At what point do we stop making excuses and do we say, okay, man, like, yes, you are playing out of your mind. And Alex, I said before the season, if they won 7 games this year, you absolutely take that. You take that as a great second step under Gannon, and you march into the next offseason, you spend money, you make some more draft picks, and you really get this thing going. Yes, they are playing out of their minds, but good teams win, great teams find a way to win. The Cardinals have been struggling that line between good and great. And, after Jonathan Gannon's first year, everybody said, oh, okay, they played great, they played hard, they were in those games. 2024 was, okay, let's win some of these games now. Let's make ourselves a competitor. Right. And a lot of that is going to fall on Drew Petzing. And it's not a do or die thing with the Cardinals offense, but unfortunately, that's what it's been the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. I can understand from a fan perspective where it's frustrating. I can understand from a fan perspective where it's like, I don't want to go through another losing season. I understand that. And rationally speaking, they've already exceeded expectations this year for how they've won and showing the flashes, especially from the defensive side of the ball with Garrett Williams and Max Melton, who's struggled more than others, but he's still a bona fide NFL player already as a rookie. Adrian Taylor-Demerson looking to supplant Jalen Thompson. Like, it's worked. Mac Wilson and Kazir White in successive off seasons, it's worked. And we'll see what happens with D-Rob up front and when BJ Ojulari comes back next year. And that's without spending any money. Like, the future is bright. Enjoy it, appreciate it, and maybe the Cardinals can back in to an NFC West championship a year before expectation. Will they win the NFC West? Is it NFC West win or bust? I will ask Donnie that next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, use live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, an official partner of the NFL. All right. Donnie Druin does great work over at Sports Illustrated on the beat, so I don't have to be that's not the only reason why. It's a byproduct for this specific friendship and relationship. It's a lot of who the hell knows what's going to happen, just like it's been the entirety of the season. Yeah. It's just a little bit more fun now because the Cardinals are in every game, irrespective of who they're playing against. You're seeing the 49ers completely internally combust, which sucks. You never want injuries to plague anybody, but it seems like this is the last year the Roman Empire is burning in Palo Alto. And that's something or Santa Clara, I guess now. And that's something that will benefit the Cardinals because, they're not reigning supreme in the NFC West anymore. It looks to be a 3-team race. The Rams scare me more than the Seahawks do, even though the Rams are a step behind the Cardinals, and the Cardinals, with a win on Sunday, will have a commanding interdivisional record at 3-1 through 4 games with 2 to play. Donnie, is it playoffs or bust at this point, even though we just discussed that they're playing out of their shoes right now because of the schedule they have for the rest of the year, because of where those games are played and what's happening in week 14 that can completely tip the scale with them?
Yeah, that's shout out to Hannah Montana. Like, can you get the best of both worlds? Can you go heading into the season after a 4-win year and be disappointed if you double your win total at 8 games and miss the playoffs? I think at some points it is fair to move the goalpost a little bit. I don't want to quite say it's playoffs or bust, but would it be massively disappointing considering where they were at, right? I think if they finish with 8 or 9 wins and they just miss out, disappointing, sure. But I think, like you had said earlier, the future is so bright. You have to look at what Monty Ossenfort is capable of doing in the next offseason and the pieces that are already here, especially if you do re-sign Budda Baker on top of James Conner. I don't think you can be disappointed. Sorry, I don't think it is playoff or bust. But with where we're at right now, if I'm a Cardinals fan, I would be extremely disappointed if they missed the postseason coming out of that bye week, going into, and then kind of watching this thing slip through your fingers.
Yeah. And they very well could, if they win the NFC West, you very well could see a home game against Minnesota, who they just played, because the Cardinals are not going to make the playoffs if they don't win the division. That is, at this point, with the NFC North being as strong as they are win-loss wise, and if the Cardinals lose on Sunday, it is going to be an uphill battle, and they're going to need some help from the remainder of the NFC West. But yeah, I mean, listen, for me, it's the Van. Have you seen Van Wilder? Like I know I'm exponentially older than you. Okay. No. So there's this line where he says, I'm waiting for that dare to be great scenario. And Sunday at State Farm Stadium against Seattle is the Cardinals' dare to be great scenario in 2024. You want to go show people that you're ready now, you have to win on Sunday. You cannot win 4, go by, and then play, some moderately tough teams and lose 3 in a row. Just can't happen. If they lose on Sunday in any sort of convincing fashion, it shows that they're not ready this year, without a shadow of a doubt, in my opinion, because it means that they're not equipped to win games that the Cardinals are supposed to win on Sunday, I believe. It's a game that they should win, even though it's going to be close, and even though they haven't played that well. Seattle hasn't played that well either. Seattle was gifted a pick 6 from Leonard Williams from Aaron Rodgers. Like, we shouldn't even be talking about this. The Cardinals should still be a top. So for me, a little bit more busty than I thought initially if they don't win the NFC West. But I agree with you. I mean, it's a win-win because they're here and they're not 3-9, and it's not like I'm T, JG, Kyler. Like, are we going to have these uncomfortable conversations? No. The Cardinals have played well enough to warrant bringing Budda Baker back next year. Yep. Because if they were 3-9, you say goodbye to both James Conner and Budda Baker. I've had conversations for 2 years that they got to bring them both back. Now it's actually warranted to pay them, and I think that they will. So, Donnie, projection for the rest of the year. Go light. I'm not going to hold you to this, but they go Seattle. They've got the Patriots. They've got Carolina. They got the Rams, and they got the 49ers in week 18, whatever decimated version is. What do you think's going to happen?
I think you go 4-1 down that stretch. And I think is it a 2-team race in the NFC West? Is it a 3-team race? I think the Rams are getting healthy at the right time. I think they're really finding their footing. They're 3 in a row now. I think they've won. Do they play the Seahawks again or no? Off the top of your head,
the Rams play the Seahawks in week 18.
Okay, so that could be very, very big down the stretch. I do think you beat Seattle. I think you learn a lot more from a loss to the win. And if Kyler doesn't throw a pick 6 in the Seattle portion of the field in the second half, I think we might be talking about a different game. Yeah. I think they learned. And also, Alex, I think this team is determined. I do not think a Jonathan Gannon team is going to want to lose 3 games in a row in the second half of the schedule. This is not Cliff Kingsbury. Like, I do not think they are going to fall apart. And I think from here, you get a really favorable 2-game stretch against the Panthers and the Patriots. Both of you should win, but I also don't want to discount either team because Bryce Young has seemingly found his stride. And then the Patriots are kind of hit or miss depending on where Drake May is on any given Sunday. On the Seattle portion, though, they play Green Bay and Minnesota back-to-back weeks. Really tough to go 1-1. Really, really tough to split that series with them. And then I think from there, like the Rams game is a coin flip in LA. Who knows? I do think you beat the 49ers and, like you said, whatever decimated San Fran team comes to Glendale. And I think 4-1. I think 4-1 to finish the season. I do think they win the NFC West.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And I think you're right. And I think that this is rational thought processes amid all the clouds that are now forming over this organization. Like, are they fakers like, everybody expected when they were 6-4 going into the bye? I think it's rationally thinking they should win the division still. But everything that you said about they're determined, they're poised, all those things are great. And I agree. And at some point, you got to show it with actual expectations. And I think the first time where it's like, okay, go prove it is Sunday. This year has been a free roll. It's been a free roll because they played the Lions tight. They should have beat the Lions at home. They blanked
Buffalo tight.
They played Buffalo tight. Washington was the outlier, and you canceled that one out with the Rams, where they blew the Rams out early on. You canceled those out. And the Cardinals have played competent football for 60 minutes for the majority of the season. Hasn't been perfect, but they've been playing out of their minds on defense specifically. And now it's time, okay, you say all these things that you're going to work on. You say all these things that are getting better. Now it's time to go do it, and do it at home. Do it a game you should win, and go take the damn reins back from the NFC West and show it that you're proactive and not just chasing like you have been for the better part of a decade. And I think that's hopefully what we'll see, because it's a lot more fun to talk about positive things than negative. Donnie, Druin, tell them where they can find you over at Sports Illustrated, please.
Yeah, SL.com/NFL/Cardinals. Also do Suns coverage too. So SL.com/NBA/Suns too. Going to see the lanky boy Victor Wembanyama in the San Antonio Spurs here in a couple hours. So I'm excited for that. Follow me on Twitter at Donnie and Druin. We also have a very mediocre podcast with host of Locked On Sun Devils, by the way, Richie Bradshaw. I enjoyed doing that with him. So Arizona Cardinals on SI on YouTube, and that's where you can find us.
I ought to be young and to do 3 jobs at once. It's a beautiful thing. Cherish it. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Remember, without you, there is no me. I'll talk to you tomorrow.